Stand up, Texas. There comes a time in one's life where you have to take a stand for what you believe in, to stand for what you know in your heart is right, for yourself, for your children, for your grandchildren. As Texans, we are in a fight for our independence and the promise of freedom that Texas was built upon. And it's that very freedom that is being stripped away from us right now. As brothers, sisters, business owners, employees, students, we are all in this fight together. It's time to take a stand, Texas. We are an organization of nearly 400,000 Texans. We're pushing for Texit and our freedom, our independence. Join us. Let's stand together. Visit texitnow.org. That's texitnow.org. Paid for by the Texas Nationalist movement.
Power, whether red or blue, I could not care less about Texas, me and you. They created this give me country that don't value hard work. For a Texan to survive, all we need are some seeds and dirt. Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Got to save your country before it's long gone. Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Got to save your country before it's long gone. We believe in family and we value our community. Gladly lend a helping hand to a neighbor in need. And we don't believe that government should provide for all of society's needs. No, it's the pride of a Texan to give to others voluntarily. Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Gotta save your country before it's long gone. Texan rise, don't you hear your call? Save your country before it's long gone. lifestyles, and they love our natural resources. But they don't want to see us driving trucks, they'd rather see us riding horses. And now they want to ban our guns, you know, especially the ones that look scary. But may I remind you of the Gonzales Cannon and the Alamo heroes we buried. Texas in her eyes, don't you hear your call? Got to save our country before it's long gone. Texas in her eyes, don't you hear your call? Got to save our country before it's long gone. This last verse is straight from the Texas Constitution, Article 1, Section 1 and 2. Look it up. Texas is an independent state, yet presently we suffer. We no longer possess the right to locally self-govern. And now it's time as a people in which all political power is inherent. And in such manner we find expedient, we reform or abolish our government. I said, Texas in her eyes, don't you hear your call? Got to save your country before it's long gone. Texas in her eyes, don't you hear your call? Got to save your country before it's long gone.
Hey, good evening, everyone. It's back. I guess maybe I'm back. I don't know. I don't know how you word it, right? Anyway, welcome to that time of the week where I take a break from work, grab a cup of coffee, and visit with you guys about Texas. Decompress, talk about what's been going on the last week, what's on my mind, and answer your questions. And apparently, because I have been gone for 2 weeks, you guys have a lot of them. So we're going to dedicate probably a big portion of our time tonight to answering your questions, and you guys drive the conversation every single solitary time we do this. So thank you very much. For those of you that have never joined us before, I'm Daniel Miller, president of the Texas Nationalist movement, and we are about to have a lot of fun. At least I think so, right? And thank you to every one of you who asked about where I was last week. Always, anytime I'm not here for coffee talk, I get notes of concern. And you guys know that, I travel. And because I travel, I have said time and time again that I do these right around the same time, but when I can. So if there's not an opportunity to do it, then I just can't, right? And I've done more than my share of these from hotel rooms before. So, it was just not possible last week, and we'll talk about why, right? We'll talk about a little bit of recap. But in the meantime, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. You guys have to forgive me. I had a sneezing fit like an hour before we went on. Like, I don't know if because there's a front moving in, there's, this ill wind is blowing in, pollen. I mean, I don't know what's happening, but, we'll get through it tonight, right? All right. So housekeeping, as I was saying, If you are watching on either of the YouTube channels, TNM's YouTube channel or mine, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can be notified every time we go live or every time we post a new video. And of course, on both pages, chat is active. So if you have questions, drop them in the chat and, make them good ones. If it's something that's covered on texitnow.org, it may not get answered. Or if I'm just feeling nice that I want to answer, I don't know, maybe the Social Security question for the 1 millionth time, maybe I'll do that. That being said, feel free to chat with your other attendees tonight. Oh, attendees. Oh my God. It's like I'm doing a webinar. Whew, been doing plenty of those lately. Chat with the other, folks that are watching. If you're watching on any of the Facebook pages or groups where this is streaming, be sure to like and comment and share. And frankly, wherever you are, be sure to share. Also, for those of you watching on the TNM app or on our Roku channel, thank you very much. Of course, you can't participate in chat there. But thank you for doing that. Head over there and give our app or the Roku channel a good high rating. It's helpful. And we are dumping tons of information over on both. Man, I got to tell you, I'm really happy with how things are going with the TNM app. The mobile app is turning out great. Our developers are working overtime. We're constantly adding new features, making improvements, and your suggestions got a lot of that. So thank you to those of you that have dropped notes and said, "Hey, it'd be cool if." Appreciate that. All right. Wow. So let's get into this, right? Let's just tear in. Oh, gone, man. I forgot to say. Well, you know what? Maybe I'll hold it. Okay. Because this is going to get into where I was last week. So last week, let's just kind of get this ball rolling. So last week, Tuesday, I made a trip to Bullard up there right outside of Tyler, and was able to be the guest speaker at a meetup hosted by David and Lori Brunig, our local coordinator and our deputy local coordinator up there, to a very packed room. It was really, really nice to be in a room just absolutely chocked full of people that were excited about Texas independence. It was interesting because the meeting room is attached to a restaurant. And so they had all the tables out of the meeting room, just started packing it with chairs. Well, by the time it was time for the meeting to start, all of the free floating chairs out there in the dining area had been already moved into the meeting room, and people were still standing up. So I cannot tell you how much I really appreciated the hospitality that David and Lori showed, and of course the excitement from all those folks that showed up there in Bullard. And actually, while I was there, I wound up Mike Jackson, who is the local coordinator there in Lufkin. Mike Jackson comes up to me before the meeting and says, "Hey, I brought you some coffee." And he brings me this coffee from this fantastic place in Lufkin. I'm not going to get into all the details, but it is a fabulous, fabulous coffee. And that's what I'm actually drinking tonight. And then as we wrap up the meeting, Lori and David hand me this bag and say, "Hey, we got you something to say thank you for coming down." And what was it? It was coffee. So you guys know me so very well. So to the both of you, thank you. I have tried both and have been drinking both, and they are both phenomenal. I really do enjoy them. And it's coffee's what kind of keeps the wheels greased around here, especially with the amount of time that we work. It's pretty ridiculous. So thank you for the coffee. Really do appreciate it. So did Bullard that night, then headed out the next night, headed up to Dallas to join our Chief of Staff, Daphne Armour, and our Tyler local coordinator, Christina Drury. We went to Don Huffines' house for a fundraiser for Senator Bob Hall, and got to talk to Bob. And frankly, it was kind of like old home week. We saw Fran and Julie from True Texas Project. We saw Alice Linehan, who I have not seen in a very long time, who worked the public ed issues. transparency issues. And I mean, I know I'm leaving a ton of people out, but I had just a phenomenal time up there. Got to see a lot of folks that I have not seen in quite some time. So that's where I was last Wednesday night. By the time we got out of there and got back to the hotel, there was just no way to fire up coffee talk. So, what happened on Thursday? Well, Thursday had meetings all day, and then drove all the way back from Denton County, all the way back home. And of course, I did not get home in enough time to fire up. I spent pretty much most of the afternoon and evening on the road. So it didn't fire up. And of course, no one wants to do this on Friday. You guys got other stuff to do on Friday. So that was a big chunk of last week. Plus, interspersed in there, working on a whole brand new thing that's going to happen with T&M Academy. Not really going to talk too much about that tonight, other than just say, stay tuned. If you're a registered supporter of the T&M, pay really close attention coming up to some of the things that are happening with the T&M Academy, some of the offerings there. It's going to be phenomenal. You're going to be super happy about that. And then, of course, hit the ground running. I mean, it's been pretty doggone hectic since then. Get back into town. I was over last night at a meeting in Tomball. Left in the afternoon. Had a phenomenal meal with Chris Powell, who's the local coordinator over in Cypress, and Jessica Padilla, who's the deputy local coordinator. Got to break bread with Chris's parents and had a phenomenal opportunity just to spend some quality time with them. But then rolling into a meeting in Tomball that they had booked, and had another room absolutely full of people that were just really excited to see Texit happening. A lot of familiar faces, a lot of folks that I haven't seen before, a lot of brand new people that have entered into leadership. And you guys just gave you made us feel amazing. Thank you so much for inviting me over to participate. And of course, I got to share some time up at the front with Matt Brazier from one of the founders of the Texan Token over at texan.cc, and who gave a phenomenal series of remarks, talking some about the Texan Token, but primarily talking about what's happening with the monetary system and how the real move, the government move related to digital currency, is to take control of what you do. If they can control your money, then they can control everything you do. If you don't behave, they just turn your money off, right? And so, he fired a warning shot over the bow for everyone that was there to explain to them that the circumstances that we live under are urgent, and to give a peek ahead to those people that were still kind of not feeling that this was such an urgent thing, to help them understand that central bank digital currency is one step toward making sure that if you don't behave, if you're not green or not PC or not whatever it is that they want you to be, they just turn off your ability to transact business, right? You can't buy food, you can't pay your bills, you can't, whatever it is, you toe the line or you starve to death. So, it was great. And I think that there was some footage of Matt's remarks, but I tell you what, I'm going to get him on here 1 week pretty soon. Maybe we'll do a special thing. And we'll talk about the whole central bank digital currency issue and where all that's headed, and give everyone a real kind of eyes wide open overview of why that's happening, how it's happening, and why it makes Texit so much more important. All right. That said, we're here tonight. One more thing before I get to your questions, too. And I see there are plenty of them. So on the way back, we stopped at Buc-ee's, and I plunked down my money for this thing, right? Hopefully you can read this. It's Texas Monthly. And we talked about this a little bit last time we were together, right? What the Texas Monthly article said and how fake it was. And of course, there was a phenomenal takedown on this article in here about us in the Texit issue. Phenomenal takedown by, of all people, Marcus Ruiz Evans over with the Calexit folks. There's an article pretty much rebutting so much of this garbage over on the Texian Partisan, so go check that out. But I had to get it in. I had to get it in hard copy, right? I had to save it because it's oddly enough that thing is stirring up so much controversy still, right? And not in the way that you would think, right? There are some, of course, there are some people who say, "Oh, that was a terrible article for us," and whatever. That just means they don't understand the context or how this whole thing works, right? But really and truly, the article has fired up Texas supporters who know that a chunk of what they said in there, they can read through it and see exactly what it is. And it's, anti-Texas propaganda. These various profs and things like that they always drag out, people that we've already talked about, that they just ran the same play that they always run, right? It's exactly the same play. It's fear mongering. It's, untruths about the economics of Texas, falsehoods about the constitutionality of it, things that we destroy time and time and time and time again. And so our people, when they see these things now, they just look at it and they realize that it's just a bunch of garbage. And so the amazing thing has not been, really that people are saying that, they destroyed. That's not happening at all. What's happening is a backlash against what is obvious propaganda. And that makes me very happy. Makes me super happy to see that. All right. So before I tear into questions and start laying out answers, I do want to give you a bit of an update, and I can't give you much of one. But there are two things that I really, really, really need to tease. Okay. So you guys remember last time we were together, I talked about this shenanigans with Facebook, right? If you go to Facebook right now and you type in texitnow.org in a post, it throws you this error where it says that it can't be shared because it goes against community standards. And we collected, thank you, by the way, to all of you who sent in screenshots, because those are coming in really handy. But I wanted to let you guys know that be expecting an update on this, a very major update in the coming days, maybe even as early as probably early next week to be safe, but it even could come before the end of the week. But I suspect it'll come next week. I think all of you are going to be extremely excited about this, and that announcement is going to come with an ask for some assistance, right? So just be prepared for that. Additionally, and I really can't say much about this, but oddly enough, the Texit petition effort that went down that ended almost a year ago is oddly enough, that issue, the whole petition campaign, is about to re-enter the news and the consciousness of Texas supporters and Texas voters. I can't say much about that, but I would say that expect a major development that is oddly related to the Texas petition sometime around the 15th or before the 15th of November would be when I would say. But something is definitely moving now. Additionally, those of you who live in some very specific areas right now may have already seen that we are running a flight of digital billboards in a lot of places across the state. So I would encourage you, if you see one of those, if you're in one of those towns that has those, and you come across one, right? I'm not going to tell you where they are because I don't want you camping on it, right? But if you see one, be sure you take a picture of it and send it to us. We know they're running. We're already hearing from people that are seeing them. But make sure that you send us a picture. We'd love to see it. And not only that, we are getting ready. Many of you that love that radio ad that we played before this broadcast, we're getting ready to run another flight of radio ads statewide. So get ready for that as well. The beautiful, beautiful thing about the success of the Catalyst campaign is we are now in a fever pitch, pushing the accelerator down to the floor, heading into the legislative session. So it's going to be all Texas all the time between now and the finish of the session. So get ready for it. And you better tell folks get on board as quickly as they possibly can. Also, it is not on the calendar yet, but I am going to go ahead and announce that on November the 15th, yours truly will be a guest on Tim Pool's podcast, whatever you want to call it, right? We got connected up, and we've got it set, and it is on the calendar, although it is not publicized yet. And I do believe it will be 3 hours live. I think 2 hours of just kind of normal live stream, and then I think his subscribers are going to get an extra hour. So it's going to be a 3 hour marathon of Texas discussion with Tim in real life, Tim Pool, and I want to thank them so much for the invitation to come on and do that. So lots of phenomenal things happening. I mean, I just can't even quantify it all. You know, we're got international media flying into Texas to cover what we're doing down here. I mean, it's happening. It's all kinds of things popping loose. New local coordinators, new local groups firing up all over the state. Meetups having record turnouts, and our local groups have gone from doing meetups primarily to going out and doing outreach, clipboarding, going to gun shows, reaching out to Texas voters. And what's going to be amazing is when everyone thinks that the general election's over and that knock at the door is, you know, they are ignoring those knocks at the door because they think they're campaign block walkers. All of a sudden, the Texiteers are going to show up, be like, hey, we're here to talk to you about your support for Texas, and all of these things that are going down. So, guys, I don't even know how to describe what I'm feeling right now about the momentum that we have. It is absolutely incredible. But I will tell you this: if you are every day not out talking to somebody and helping us connect with Texas voters, you need to do that. Right? Many hands make light work. The more of us that work this issue, the more of us that work on connecting with supporters and getting them engaged, connecting with these voters, and then connecting them to the TNM, the shorter the time frame is. Some people say, why does this thing take too long? Well, I talked about it in the book, right? It's numbers. It really is about numbers and about how many people are pouring time in. I've only got 24 hours in a day. I've only got 7 days in a week and 365 days in a year personally. But together, collectively, think about how much time, how much effort that we have that we can get this thing done. And if we encourage and expect that everyone who supports this will participate in some way. Look, if all you can do is register your support and then help us go out there and connect with 10 voters, just 10. Just say, look, I'm going to go out and I'm going to find 10 Texas supporters. And that was literally the sum total of what you did. That would help. I mean, imagine if every one of us did that. Well, people say, well, that just sounds so simplistic and so ridiculous. But guess what? That's what actual political campaigns do, right? They get volunteers, they organize the volunteers. Volunteers go out, they make connections with voters, they get commitments to vote for a particular candidate. They check it off a list, they build up their numbers, and then when they go into election day, they have a rough idea of how many votes they can expect to get. Probably one of the reasons that Beto's campaign team is in freakout mode right now, but it's a whole other story, right? Not for tonight. So, let me encourage you to do that, right? Head over there and register your support. It's at tnm.me/vote, right? You go to TNM website, go to tnm.me, and you'll see the register your support. Boom, hit that button, and it's done and done. We'll get you emails. We'll get you all spun up. You'll know what you need to do. And then you'll have access to the outreach page with your own QR codes. You can download the app, and the app itself makes it so stinking easy to connect with other voters. It's insane. So make sure you get that done. All right. So let's get to some questions for tonight. Boy, I see it already packing up. Hey guys. Wow. You guys are all saying howdy to me and to each other. Howdy to all of y'all. If I went through this, I'd be here an hour, guys. Thank y'all so much. Y'all humble me. I don't even know any other way to say it. Okay. So let me do this one first. So Lee Jacobson, who is our Abilene. He's our local coordinator there in Abilene for the Abilene local group. He wanted me to mention I'm calling in via Zoom. I'm going to participate virtually at their meetup Saturday in Abilene, right? So I will be there to I don't know. They're going to put a TV up, and I'm going to do this and have a conversation with them. And so I'm appearing virtually. It's been a while since I've done a virtual drop by at a meetup. And so, Lee, thank you for doing that. So if you want more details about that, excuse me, head over to the events page on tnm.me. And additionally, next month, I'm going to be in Abilene in person. So you don't want to miss that. So just all those things, you'll find them on the events page. Head over to tnm.me/events. And Lee is one of those guys that's out there just absolutely doing a phenomenal job in Abilene. So thank you so much, Lee. Lee and I have an appointment at a Long John Silver's. I'm just saying. Okay. No hate mail over LJS. That's how you get banned from chat. Okay, this is let's get to some of this. Okay, here's Marv. Marv says, I live in El Paso, Texas. Is it possible to start a charter there? He's talking about a local group. I would be ready and willing to begin one. Hey, that's Marv, that's super. Thank you very much. We've had a couple of opportunities out there. We've got a cluster of people in El Paso that really want to form up. And what they've been missing is someone to step forward and say, I want to be a leader, right? So what I would encourage you to do is, if you're already a registered supporter, go ahead and, why talk about it when I can show you? Boom, there it is. Oh, but I got to take your chat off there, or your question. There we go. If you want to organize a local group, head over to tnm.me/local, right? That's one way to do it. Additionally, if you're a registered supporter and you log in, you can head over to the local groups or into the activity feed. You can find your local groups there that you're a part of, that exist. Just so you know, in our system, there is a local group for pretty much every city in Texas. Those groups are divided into currently organizing and local groups. Local groups already have leadership, right? They already have a local coordinator. Currently organizing means that there are supporters there, but no one has stepped forward to take control, to say, look, I'll volunteer. I'll be a leader. I'll help organize this thing. So that is a great opportunity for you. So Marv, that's what I would recommend that you do. Head over there right now, tnm.me/local. The supporters in El Paso need you. The TNM needs you, and Texas needs you. Okay, Marv, that's great news, man. Thanks for doing that. That makes me happy. Excuse me. Okay, here's one. Laura says, TNM could put a billboard on our land along I-30. Well. Wouldn't that be something special? Laura, do me a favor. Drop an email off to the TNM, right? Go to the TNM website, go to the contact form. Let's get that in process. Let's figure out what that looks like. We'd be more than happy to have that conversation with you. Let's make that happen. Again, very generous. See, this is the momentum I'm talking about. Somebody hops on, says there's no local group in El Paso. I want to lead. Laura jumps on, says, hey, I want to put a billboard on my property right on I-30. This is what I'm talking about, right? This is phenomenal. Okay, here we go. This is from Brian. Brian wants to know. Brian's also one of our local coordinators, by the way. I think, Brian, you're in Groesbeck. But Brian says, do we have a newspaper ad? The answer is there will be a newspaper ad. The challenge with stock newspaper ads has been, in other words, to provide out that people can use, is various newspapers priced by various sizes, right? So we don't want to price anybody out of the market. But I will say that there is something in the works now that will involve a big newspaper ad in a major market newspaper with a lot of people's names on it. Other than that, I say nothing. Okay. See, man, I'm plowing through these. Okay, let's here we go. Here's one from Jim. Jim says, question raised in my meetup last week. Jim is also one of our local coordinators. He says, after Texas, who would control oil drilling off the Texas coast and the Gulf? Well, uh, the waters off the coast of Texas belong to Texas up till the international waters line, right? So who controls Texas? Who controls oil drilling off the Texas coast? That would be Texas, right? So all of you guys that are, that are extremely upset about the federal government's war on energy, understand that with the federal government out of the equation, it allows us to uncap our energy potential. We were at one time a few years ago producing more oil than Saudi Arabia, and it can be that way again. Not that we want to drive down the price to nothing because we want to flood the market. But we also don't want to be in a position where we've got, less than 30 days worth of diesel fuel either, right? We see those things all the time where people say, well, there's enough oil in this section of Texas to fuel the United States for 200 years. Guess what? There's enough oil in this section of Texas to fuel Texas for the next 1,000 years, right? So, that's how that sort of thing works. When you are a self-governing independent nation, you get to control things that self-governing independent nations control, and that would be your energy policy and all of that drilling off the coast of Texas that belongs to us, right? So, if people want to know what happens to it, it means that our energy industry stops being under attack by eco wackos, and they can do, our energy industry. I mean, look, we've got high standards here, right? Contrary to the narrative from the progressives and the climate warriors out there, Texas has pretty strict policies about how production of energy affects the environment. Now, federal government would tell you something different than that, but I will tell you that anyone here in Texas that is an oil producer would tell you otherwise, is that the Texas regulations here are pretty doggone stringent toward that sort of thing. But here's the one thing we don't do. We don't give up our strength and energy over crazy ideologies. And so as a self-governing independent nation, we get to set that policy. And to me, if I were someone who was working in oil and gas or energy as a whole, I would be all over Texas. Because if it continues down this path, oil and gas workers not going to have jobs. If it continues out the way that it is, and the federal government gets everything that it wants to, and all of these, climate warriors get everything that they want, and they can base it on the faulty science, then, a lot of you guys are going to be out of work. A lot of the engine for Texas economy, not the sole engine, right? But a lot of what drives the Texas economy is going to go down the tubes, right? The three pillars of the Texas economy are energy, agriculture, and technology. That's where it is. But those pillars aren't the sole things, because filled in with all of that is the fact that about 90% of the revenue of our economy is coming from small to medium-sized businesses here in Texas. And it's not that those small to medium-sized businesses solely exist to support energy, ag, and technology, right? It all works together. But those three sectors are major sectors. And with the attacks from the federal government on energy and agriculture, it's going to be, this is something that we've got to really, really think about. If I was a farmer, rancher, or if I was in oil and gas, you couldn't keep me away from Texas with a stick of dynamite and a crowbar. This is the only way. Okay, there we go, Jim. Okay, here's one from Don. Let's see if this thing will work here. Don says, he says, I'm 74. I hope to see our independence before I have my book of life read by my Lord Jesus. Don, I'm with you, man. That's why we're working so hard. I can tell you that I think all of us that are grinding away at this thing so hard day to day to day, keep that sort of thing in mind, is we don't want to lose a single person. We don't want any more people to work toward independence and not be able to see it. Now, it'll probably happen. It'll happen that we will lose people on the way. But it weighs on us. And so, sometimes when folks out there want to kind of be half butts about it, or, get ridiculous and not put in their, not do their part, not help, or want to hinder, it makes people like us a little prickly because, Don, we want to do it for people like you. We want to get this done sooner rather than later. I've been at this thing for 26 years. I'm ready to win. I'm ready to see this thing. I'm ready to go do whatever it is I'm going to do with the rest of my life. Never in a million years on August 24th, 1996, did I envision that I would be right here still fighting this fight today. Not at all. Did not. Would it have changed my decision? Not at all. Not at all. Sometimes things take a while, and it not. I don't think it's any particular person's fault that's working this thing. But those people that kind of hokey pokey in and out, and they kind of half do it or whatever, those are the ones, we might get a little prickly with them. But Don, that's what we're doing. We're doing it for you, buddy. Okay, tell you what, let's keep those questions coming, folks. If you're just now joining us, drop your questions in chat on either the YouTube channels or in the comments on any of the Facebook pages. Kara is handling all of those, and she'll get the question in the queue. And you guys have had some great ones. You guys have emailed in some phenomenal ones, too. By the way, I didn't even mention this, but some of you already know if you got the email, you can email your questions into coffeetalk@vtnm.org. That's coffeetalk@vtnm.org. And it's actually at the bottom of the screen right now, right there. Look at that. Man, how is that for timing, right? So be sure, if you don't want to deal with the chat scrum, just email it into that address. All right, so let me take some of these. You guys have sent in some great ones here. So let's pull these up. Okay, this is a good one. Steve says, is there now or any chance of converting the rainy day fund into gold? With the coming collapse of the dollar, this seems to be a prudent move. Yeah, I mean, do I think there's a chance? Maybe a small one, right? But that would be probably a legislative move that would need to be made. But the one thing that we found out, and I've talked about this on some previous coffee talks before, but right after we worked the Texas Gold Depository bill, we were looking for what was essentially the establishment of state bank. Okay, now don't send hate mail, right? That there's a whole kind of line of rationale and reasoning about that. If you are opposed to state banks, that's great. But there is a strategic rationale to why that needed to happen, and there had been some movement on this issue, I think, in North Dakota or South Dakota. It's been many years ago, but we had been talking to State Representative James White about this issue, and even provided him with some draft legislation. During the research for that bill, he dug off into some things that we were not even particularly aware of, but I actually talk about it in the book some, is that Texas actually already sort of has that, not just one though, but actually several, and they have, you will hear countries that have sovereign wealth funds. Texas actually has more than one of those, and honestly, that was when I began to realize that from an economic or financial standpoint, when you throw the Texas Gold Depository Act and the system of electronic transaction that it talks about in there, if that were to get implemented anytime soon, hello, comptroller, right? Get off your butt and let's get it done. But you begin to combine all of those things together and you realize that the gap between where we are and where we need to be a self-governing independent nation is very, very, very narrow, right? So many of these things are already done. And that's when it began to dawn on me, and that's why I talk about it in the book, and I'm more convinced than ever that the gap between where we are and where we have to get to be a self-governing independent nation is very, very small, because we're not starting from scratch. And oddly enough, I think a lot of it, I don't know that any of it was done really intentionally, like with the thought that it is going to end in Texas independence one day. But I think that there is probably some sort of subconscious mechanism that said, we need to do these things to make Texas more independent in what we do. So great question, Steve. We'll see that would be a legislative push that would have to be done. Excuse me. Wow, ill wind blew in. Okay, here's a question from Douglas about the Texan token airdrop. He says, when will we see the Texan tokens airdropped into our crypto wallets? That is a question for the aforementioned Matt Frazier and the folks over at Texan Token, texan.cc. I know there's some final things that are happening right now on our end to account for crypto donations and things of that nature. But I heard a really interesting statistic last night that I thought was really, really serendipitous, signposting, whatever you want to call it. So the total number of contributions for the Catalyst campaign that came in via the Catalyst campaign form on our website was 1,000 even, like literally 1,000 even. The number of contributions that came in via cryptocurrency direct was 836. And when they provided that set of numbers and we provided our set of numbers and we looked at it and we said, this is not the case, right? So they went back, they checked the numbers again, and sure enough, 1,000 on our side, 836 on the crypto side, for a total of 1,836 contributions during the Catalyst campaign. You tell me that that's not meant to be, and I'll eat my hat. That blew me away. There's sometimes that you're told that something is the right thing to do. Interesting. Okay. Stacy, this is a good question. Stacy wants an update on the Election Integrity Task Force. So here's Stacy's question, our local coordinator there in San Antonio. She says, is there an update on the primary election integrity investigation? Will Claver put out a report and make it public eventually? So here's what's going to go down with the Election Integrity Task Force. The Election Integrity Task Force has pretty much collected whatever data we're going to collect, and it's being analyzed. But here's what you will see. You may wind up seeing a report, a final report, but ultimately the goal of the Election Integrity Task Force was not to necessarily provide some kind of written report. It was to provide something that was actionable, right? So what you're going to see, the outcome of the Election Integrity Task Force, is really twofold. Number one is you're going to see it in our legislative priorities for the next session. Okay, so that's the first place. You're going to see the findings reflected in that. And I can tell you, ultimately, what it's going to come down to is that it's going to be all about really two things, and that is paper ballots and risk limiting audits. And we can talk more about that later. But the second thing that you're going to see play out from the results of the Election Integrity Task Force is going to be what we're training supporters and volunteers to do moving forward in future election cycles, right? So you will, kind of actually ties into what I was saying earlier about watching for changes on the academy. You're going to see a lot of things transpire where our volunteer army is going to be a part of the solution. So the things that we train on specifically are going to come from obviously some other sources, but will be primarily directed by the outcome of the investigation by the Election Integrity Task Force. So good question, Stacy. Okay, so Bob wants to know. Bob says, "Where's the money to replace all the federal funds going to come from?" Bob, this is sort of Texas 101, and so for those of you that are brand new, buckle up because I want to. You guys are about to get all aboard the bus because you're getting ready to be taken to school. Okay, so here's what you have to understand: Texas overpays anywhere from 103 to 160 billion dollars annually into the federal system. Okay, so that's an overpayment. So what that tells you is that any federal dollars that come into Texas first come out of your pocket, go to Uncle Scam, take a haircut, and then get pushed back into Texas with a bunch of strings attached. And those strings generally involve forcing the state government to raise taxes on you to match what the federal government wants to send, right? So you're kind of paying for it twice, but that overpayment is the key. The overpayment. So an overpayment essentially means that when federal money comes in, it actually came out of your pocket first. Now, it's interesting because the question about whether or not Texas pays more or receives more has been a point of contention. Okay, and it's been a point of contention for a very long time. You will have the pro DC status. The progressives say that Texas is a recipient state, right? That we get more money than we put in. But that's because they are really crappy at math. Okay. 2005, the Tax Policy Foundation did a study and showed that absolutely we were paying more in than we got out, but they don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about that. What they want to do is they want to calculate this thing wrong. Here's how they cook the books. They cook the books by taking all the federal revenue that comes out of Texas and then taking all of the federal revenue that comes into Texas, and that is their calculation. But that's not a fair calculation, and here's why. Take something like federal pension benefits, okay? So if I'm working and I pay into, say, Social Security or any of the federal pension plans, I pay into that, and then when I go to collect, I go move someplace else. Well, I paid in from here, but it's being paid out to a different state. So when you look at federal pension benefits, or really any of those funds that are being paid out, right, the obligations between the federal government and the individual, so that'd be federal pension benefits primarily, you have to take that out and calculate it completely separate because number one, everyone gets a chance to pay into it no matter where they live. That also means that they can collect it no matter where they live, including not living in the United States, right? Federal pension benefits can be collected no matter where you live, with the exception of a handful of countries, right? Like North Korea, Cuba, Iran, places that are under banking sanction, right? So that's why all of these things tie in. So security question, everything else. So what they do, though, is they leave that in there because you have a lot of people that are fleeing those other states and retiring to Texas. So they say, well, that money, Texas couldn't survive without federal money. Well, that money doesn't go to Texas. That money goes to the individual that happens to be living in Texas that earned that federal pension payment. Okay. So that's how they cook the books. Now, one thing, so when we released our study that we did in 2015 and then updated again in 2017, and we're in the process of updating it again, the only fair way to account specifically for the fact that they create the federal government's money that comes in actually creates an additional tax burden on Texas taxpayers is you say, this is how much money is sent from Texans to the federal government. This is how much money is sent from Texans to the state government. That is a revenue pile, okay? And then you say, this is how much money comes in from the federal government, right? How much they're paying in. And then over here, this is how much the state budget is, right? This is how much it's costing to operate the state government. So you take those two, right? So you have a revenue side and you have an expenditure side. The revenue side accounts for how much money Texas taxpayers are generating right now, right, with the existing tax burden as it is. And then the expenditure side accounts for how much federal money comes in, plus all of those federal matching funds, right, that are the state matching funds that go to capture that federal revenue. And so then you take out any of those obligations that are between the federal government and the individual that can be collected no matter where they live, like federal pension benefits. You take the revenue and the expenditures, and you do your math on it, and what you come up with is year on year, and it varies, but the overpayment by Texas is about $103 to $160 billion that Texas taxpayers overpay in the federal system. So what that tells you is, and that was the conclusion of both of the report back in 2015 and 2017, is if you take the federal government out of the equation, right, and you take the same amount of revenue that Texans are already paying, you have the ability then to effectively recreate everything that the feds do here and still save $103 to $160 billion annually. Now, does that account, it's not talking about how do we collect that? How do we capture that? Well, that's a whole other conversation, right? But the thing that you have to do when you talk about this particular issue is you have to compare apples to apples. The debate that was brought up in this Rags article, right, is that Texas could not survive without federal money, right? So you rebut that, right? We're not talking about how to capture it because they didn't talk about that. That's a whole other conversation and a whole other debate that we can totally win, right? If we want to talk about that, we can. But the debate, right, their assertion is that Texas cannot survive without federal money. And our counter to that is Texas can not only survive without the federal money coming in, but we will thrive because it gives us an opportunity to reduce the tax burden on Texas citizens, right? To put that $103 to $160 billion back in the pockets of Texas taxpayers, circulate that thing through our economy, jump us up from the 9th largest economy in the world to the 5th or 6th, just that one action alone, right? I mean, so, all of a sudden now, what they're saying as an argument actually works to our advantage because now we get to point out the fact that we're paying more to those jokers than we ever get back. And the one thing that we are accounting for in the new report that we did not account for in 2015 or 2017, that we are doing the calculations on, is how much of the federal money comes back into Texas that is actually debt, right? Because let's remember, the federal government is really broke, right? Deficit spending is at an all-time high, right? The federal debt is $31 trillion. So the question becomes, do we even count a single federal dollar that flows into Texas as being a federal dollar, since ultimately it is an IOU to someone else that we have to pay, or our children have to pay, or their children have to pay, right? So even when the federal government's pumping money in here, it's really not their money. They're just borrowing it against our name. So, if we're going to talk about what the impact of federal budgetary policy or monetary policy is, you got to have debt. You got to have that conversation about the federal debt. You cannot have the conversation without the federal debt. And look, that's a ticking time bomb, folks. We're $31 trillion in plus in stated federal debt, not to mention the probably 50 trillion plus in unfunded liabilities. In the things where they have attached your name and your children's name and their children's name and their children's name and their children's name as the person who has to pay the debt. So who cares? It wouldn't matter if they provided every single dollar in here, because they're borrowing it in our names. And ultimately, we'll be the ones that have to pay it back unless we tax it. So anyway, that was a very long answer to your question, but Bob, thank you for asking it because it gave me an opportunity to talk about the updates that we're doing on the report. Okay, let's take a look here. Okay, so let's see what we got over here. Man, we got some more questions. You guys are peppering me with some phenomenal ones tonight. I don't know that I'm going to be able to get to all of them, but I am going to try. Okay. All right, so here's this question. Let's see here. What do we got? Benny says, Daniel, if war comes to the U.S., what should Texas do? Texas should always defend itself, right? And if there is an aggressor that attacks the other states of the United States, and if it's an attack, right, then we defend. I mean, that's how it works. I'm personally not for a bunch of entangling, getting Texans and the U.S. soldiers and everyone else involved in some foreign entanglements or foreign wars, right? But if the United States was, attacked, then Texas should defend Texas and defend its neighbors. No one wants to see an attack from some aggressor over here in our own backyard. I said this time and time again, related to post-Texas defense policy, which is we're going to share defense concerns with what's left of the United States and any other states that wind up leaving the United States. We will have common defense and national security concerns, right? And so it's just the way the world works. And I don't think that we would want to see the United States attacked in an unprovoked manner by anyone. Okay, so good question, Benny. Thank you for that. Okay, here we go. This one's from William. Let's see if this thing will fit on the whole screen. Yeah, it did. Okay. It says, hey, Dan. Oh, we're on a short name basis. Out-of-state Democrat, but I support what you're doing. The Texas legislature at this point stands between peace and violence. What can I, a non-resident, do to help? It's a great question. There are several things. Look, call the governor. I mean, there's several things. Look, if you want to support the movement for Texas independence, there are many ways to do it. You can still register your support. We make note that you're not a Texas voter, right, or a Texas resident. We make note of that. But it helps to connect with the movement. But additionally, if you feel like you have a solid case for why you support it, there are several things you can do. Number one, you can let statewide elected officials here in Texas know that you don't live in Texas, but you support the effort and you believe that Texans should have a vote on it. Outside support like that does not hurt. That's number one. Number two, you can make a contribution to the organization to help us reach more Texas voters. But number three, the other thing that you could do is rally up people wherever it is that you live in whatever state. To support the effort that we're doing. Write letters to your editor that you supported and why you support it. Go out there and post all over the place on social media, bang the drum for us. We have friends of this movement that live in many, many other states, including, I think there's a website called the British Friends of the T&M, right? There are people out there that are doing their dead level best to help drum up external support for, at a minimum, giving us a vote on the issue. And that's definitely something that you could do and a good way for you to participate. Okay, let's get down to the brass of the tax. I got, I think, one more question over here that I can get to. Let's see. Okay, this one is from Carlton. Carlton says, Daniel, when we get the yes vote to leave, who will be the ones to change the Constitution to read that we are a nation and the new policies? So again, process question. Post-Texas vote, there are four things that have to be addressed: constitutional issues, statutory issues, international covenants, treaties, and agreements, and finally the negotiated issues. So in that constitutional phase, and this is one of the reasons I keep saying that elections matter. Right? This is why it's important that we clean the pipes out of Ramoners, right? The Remain faction, that do not want us out, do not want to give us the vote. We got to clean these guys out because we want some solid people that are going to respond to the will of the people on this issue. Okay. So that being said, the way that it would be handled would be the way that a constitutional amendment is handled right now. It gets passed by the legislature, and what we have proposed is a basket of constitutional amendments wrapped up in one that are put before the voters of Texas that address these. There's precedent for it in the 1960s called the Deadwood Amendment, which essentially they made a bunch of wholesale changes, wrapped it up in one amendment, and that one amendment was voted on to either accept or reject the changes. And I think that's the way that it would be done here and should be done here because it is the quickest. But that also means that you have an opportunity at that time to address not just some real kind of technical tweaks, name of Texas, state of Texas, Republic of Texas, changing the names of the offices, all those things I've talked about on previous coffee talks and talk about in the book. You've got the opportunity to do that. But I think it also opens up the opportunity to address some of the constitutional deficiencies that we have seen in recent years, which is curing this challenge with the rural-urban divide, right? I think that is probably one of the largest constitutional challenges that we're going to have in Texas moving forward is how we address statewide governance fairly for a state whose population where 72% of the voters in the state live in about 30 counties, right? With that leaving, 224 counties kind of at their mercy. And I think that is going to have to be addressed, and that may be the time to do it. But again, what I have said, and I think it might have even been on the last coffee talk or the one previous to that, there is no political appetite for wholesale constitutional change right now. It's not there. We've seen bills that deal with changing how constitutional amendments are adopted to how statewide elected officers are chosen. We've seen legislation and proposed legislation languish and die, not even get anywhere, right, that deal with those issues. And the reason being is there's a reluctance to open up the Constitution with so many other major issues that Texas is facing right now. Border crisis. There's so many things, right? So because all of those things seem immediate and crisis, those issues of fundamental constitutional governance, those governance issues, don't seem to raise to the level of priority to capture people's attention. But Texas changes the game on that, right? We're already going to have to address some constitutional issues related to Texas being a self-governing independent nation. But additionally, during that period before the Texas vote, there is going to be a long and vigorous debate over governance here in Texas. And as such, those issues, I guarantee you, will be brought up during that. And so you have those issues discussed, debated, very public. You have the Texas vote. We win the Texas vote. On the other side of that, we've got to crack open the Constitution. Now you've got about 10 million Texas voters, right? 10 million Texans that went to the polls, voted yes on Texas, that are going to want to see those things implemented. And let me tell you, you look at the participation in any election cycle here in Texas, and you'll realize that 10 million voters all pulling a single direction, all wanting a thing, they are going to get that thing. Because going against those people is political suicide. And if there is one thing elected officials in Texas understand, it's, that really motivates them. It's the fear of not getting reelected. And 10 million Texans is enough to ensure that happens if they don't do what it is they're supposed to do. So anyway, thank you for that, Carlton. Well, here it is, folks. That took us right to the wire. And it's time to wrap this bad boy up. I even started early tonight. So you realize if I'd have started on time, this would have gone late and still may yet go late. All right, so let's get down to kind of where we're headed. Remember, if you are not already a member of the Texas Nationalist movement, head over to tnm.me/join. That is tnm.me/join. Also, if you are not a member of your local group, head over to tnm.me/local groups. You can see the link on the website, but go to local groups, find your local group, and if there is not one in your area, head over to tnm.me/local. Volunteer. Come on, be a local coordinator. We are onboarding more and more. Look, I would not. I made the prediction. Would not surprise me if we ended the year as strong as with probably more field leadership than the Republican Party of Texas, and that is no small feat. And we need you to make it happen. Don't make a liar out of me. I predicted it. Let's make it happen. Also, if you have not already downloaded the TNM mobile app, you're going to want to make sure you get over and do that. Head over to tnm.me/app. That's tnm.me/app. Or you can go straight to the Apple App Store or to the Google Play Store and download it. Just look for tnm.me. Yes. All right, folks. Well, that is a wrap for Coffee Talk tonight. There was a lot more talk than coffee. I mean, it's true. There was. And this is really good coffee, even cold. But it was well worth it to be able to spend this time with you tonight. So I've got to get back to work, but we're going to wrap this bad boy up, and I'm going to leave you with the words that I leave you with every single solitary week. Not my words, but the words of the inimitable Sam Houston when he said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. I believe that time is now. And the question is, will you stand with her? Good night, everyone.